I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black.
Hello and welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity. If it is the end of democracy in America, then we are coming at you, because why not? It's been a long time since we've done one of these discussion videos, but I think given, everything, it seemed like maybe a good time to just kind of talk about the election. As we were recording it, this is just shy of 1 week after, and I have feelings, and I thought that my co-host would also have feelings about this, so we figured we'd sit down. Joining me, as always, is Brandon.
Hello, my people.
And Kale.
Hello.
Before we talk about the destruction of society as we know it, let's talk about drinking, because that helps. Since it is the American system that is collapsing, I thought I would drink something uniquely American, which is bourbon. This is a local store pick of Maker's Mark that I like very much. Plus, it was on sale, and that helps. Brandon, what are you having?
This is just a simple mix of Cynar and sweet vermouth.
So 2/3 of a Boulevardier or a Negroni. Kale, what are you having?
I'm having a Tall Boy Modelo Chelada Limony Sol.
That sounds awful.
It's pretty good.
If you insist. Okay, so I think what we're going to start off with is I'm just going to walk through the numbers that we have currently. Obviously, Donald Trump has been reelected president. I've been seeing some people on the left talking about election interference. There's been no evidence of that anywhere.
Yeah, I have seen the conspiracy theories start.
We can't be like people on the other side. He won. He won this election. There seems to be very little doubt in that. So I think to start off with, it is 226 electoral votes to his 312. Kamala Harris lost every single swing state without exception. She lost Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. There was some polling right before the election that seemed to indicate she was picking up a little bit of steam, but apparently that was not true. I think there is going to be a little bit of because the polling wasn't vastly off, which I think some people say it just wasn't. I mean, the polling had this election on a absolute knife edge, and it had it that way for the past 3 weeks at least, if not farther, basically since Kamala took over. Trump has won the popular vote, which is the first time that has happened to a Republican since 2008, I believe. No, since 2004. George W. Bush won the popular vote the second time.
And that is only the second time since the 80s.
Yeah. Ronald Reagan won the popular vote both times pretty handily. But then I think H.W. might have won the popular vote. It doesn't, not that important. But basically, the popular vote generally...
in like 89.
Well, 88 would have been the election. 89, he would have taken office.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this case, they're saying right now, and again, these numbers will probably change a little bit, but I don't think it's going to change significantly. That Kamala Harris got about 71,000 votes. Excuse me, 71 million votes, and Trump got about 74.5 million. So he won by about 3.5 million votes, which is, I mean, that's not insignificant. And that's why I kind of wanted to talk about these numbers first, because this is a win. This is a very clear win for the former president. And I think that before we even talk about what we think about it, we have to say he won.
I hadn't seen that updated count for Kamala.
I mean, this is the numbers that came up on Google right now. And this said it was updated as recently as about 2 minutes ago. So yeah, he won. He won. And I am not somebody that wanted him to win. I wanted him to lose so badly it hurt. But I think that you should never fall into a position where you are just saying, I will refuse to look at reality and just substitute my own, because that's not good. So I don't know, what are you guys' initial thoughts? Brandon, let's start with you.
Yeah, I have no interest in going down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole. I am on a lot of places in leftist circles and Reddit and Facebook. I've deleted my Twitter account and joined up with Threads and stuff like that. And there is a handful of people that are saying, "Hey, what happened to all these millions of votes that came out for Biden last year?" And it's you. I mean, the simple truth is that not enough people were inspired by Biden or Kamala. It's not a conspiracy. You just had an entire half of our two-party system decide not to talk about the issues that really are affecting working class people. And even though Trump lies all the time, he at least talked about it. I mean, it's not for people who don't spend a whole lot of time engaged in politics or in the political sphere. It's not that hard to understand. They finally heard somebody saying they are going to make it better for them and not just billionaires, even though that's patently ridiculous. Donald Trump is going to do the exact opposite. But they didn't hear Kamala say anything like that.
Yeah. I'll get into that a little bit more too, kind of specifically, because that infuriates me. But I don't disagree with anything you said. Kale, what about you? Just kind of initial thoughts.
Well, not much to say about the propaganda machine. We all know how that works. I think that this says more about America and Americans than it does about who the president is. He clearly won. He clearly won because a bunch of people like him and agree with his ideas or have their own ideas about what they think he is. And, they win.
By the way, I would push back a little bit on that. I don't know that they voted for him because they like him. I don't know that we know that.
Maybe it's because they hated Kamala more than they hated him.
I think they hate the system more than anything else. I think they see the system as being big and corrupt, and in that they're not entirely wrong.
I will give a little pushback there. I think they like Trump. I'm not convinced they like a lot of the other Republicans. Yes, they took the Senate, but down ballot Democrats did way better than Kamala did.
Yeah, in fact, if you look at every single senator, at least, and I haven't looked at all of them specifically, but I've looked at a bunch of them. If you look at every single Senate race that I saw, the Democrat was outperforming Kamala Harris. And that's an important thing to note. So that means the Democrats are not like a hated party. They really aren't. They still do have popularity. And one of the things that you kind of talked about, and Kale, I'll get back to you in 1 second, is that when I saw Kamala Harris talk, and when she first came in, she started off talking about a few issues, but then it just devolved into Trump is an asshole. The problem is everybody knows Trump's an asshole. Even the people that voted for him would say he's an asshole. Some of his biggest fans would say he's an asshole. Trump would say he's an asshole. And so that is not a compelling message. And so I have a few ideas about that, but Kale, go ahead and finish up. Sorry.
Now, the whole do they like him or not thing, I mean, we can get into the whole, hey, let's lynch the other Republicans that say bad stuff about him because he's like our new Jesus or whatever. We can get into that a little bit. But really, I just think, if people made this decision, they're going to have to live with the consequences of this decision. And I had, I'll tell you my own personal experience in the last couple of months. I kind of shied away from politics. I was feeling burnt out about it. I agreed to come back and do this video because we haven't done a video in a long time. And I thought, well, this is an opportunity. But I told a bunch of guys at work that were all very much pro-Trump. I told them, I said, if I'm right about him, you guys will eventually come to see things my way. And if I'm wrong, then I guess I'll just shut up about it. And I've honestly been trying to avoid having conversations, let alone arguments about politics in the last couple of months. But yeah, we made our bed and now we got to sleep in it. Well, some of us didn't make the bed.
To sort of take off, by the way, there was one poll, and we're all located in Iowa, that said that Donald Trump was actually behind by 5 points in Iowa. That poll turned out to be disastrously wrong. Trump won Iowa by what, 12 points or something?
I think it was
Yeah,
higher.
12 or 3. It was by a lot. It was just that.
it wasn't just that he won; it's he won in such sweeping fashion.
Yeah.
And they see him as this big hero, and I don't know. I guess if he wants to play the hero, he better be a freaking hero. But I don't think he's a hero. I think he's a bullshit artist.
It looks like in Pennsylvania, he won by about 150,000 votes. Michigan, by about 80,000 votes. Wisconsin, Wisconsin by 30,000 votes. Arizona by almost 200,000 votes. Nevada by 40,000 votes. So these are not small wins. This is not like 2016 or 2020. In 2016, Trump won basically with 3 states by about 70,000 votes. He won most of these states by more than 70,000 votes. So again, like what you're saying, yes, he didn't just win. He won pretty decisively. This is what he can legitimately claim as a mandate, which I find to be terrifying.
Which is still, as a portion of the country, still kind of ridiculous, since still a huge amount of people didn't turn out to vote, and a huge amount of people did vote for Kamala. I mean, 71 million is quite a bit. But yes, he'll see it as a mandate. But I mean, Republicans would always do that. If they won by a single vote, they'd say it was a mandate.
Right. I mean, they said in 2016.
Yeah. When he didn't win a popular vote.
I was going to see if I could get the actual turnout. Oh, God. But no, the thing you were saying, Kale, I actually haven't watched any news programs, and I watch news programs pretty regularly. I haven't watched anything for basically a week. You know, I woke up the next morning. I didn't watch the polls. I didn't watch the returns come in because I didn't want to, because I was afraid this would happen. And then I woke up the next morning, saw he won, and basically just kind of went on about my day. I didn't really want to watch. I've actually, we might get into this a little bit later on. I've sort of not been particularly liking a lot of the political news lately, especially. I mean, again, I don't watch any of the stuff on the right because it's, you know, kind of lunacy. But even on the left, there's been a lot of finger pointing. I feel like there's been a lot of sort of backbiting. You know, I'm not on Twitter. I deleted Twitter, a year ago? But there's definitely, I feel like people are trying, everybody's blaming somebody, which again, you kind of have to, but also it's like we got to.
Well, along that same lines, I haven't watched a lot of videos about it, but I have read a whole bunch of posts about it, and especially that Wednesday, the hot takes were all over the place. You could have pointed to 100 different articles and Reddit posts and whatever aggregated, and they would share a similar tone, but the blame would be placed in 100 different places by the time you got done reading it all.
By the way, I was going to mention this earlier, speaking of the conspiracy theories, one that came up that I saw a fair amount is people blaming George Clooney, which I think is humorous. Because George Clooney is sort of one of the first big party people that came out and called for Biden to drop out. I will tell you this, beyond any reasonable doubt at all, Biden would have lost by more.
Oh, yeah.
Biden would have lost by a lot more. I mean, it is very much conceivable that Biden could have lost New Jersey and Minnesota. And possibly even Virginia. Like that, those were on the table with Biden in the election. So do not think for 1 minute that Kamala Harris did worse than Biden. Kamala Harris definitely did better than Biden would have done. Because not only was he bad, he was slipping. I mean, that debate, I didn't even watch the whole debate, but that debate was one of the most embarrassing debate performances of anybody that I've ever seen in modern American politics. That debate was immediately disqualifying. And I do think, again, I don't want to get into the conspiracy side of this because, you know, if you say, for example, people in the Biden orbit knew about this, that's considered a conspiracy theory, but I don't buy that. These people are around Biden every day, and the idea that they didn't know that this man was clearly not fit to serve a second term is just fantasy to me. Like, you listen to the guy talk, for Christ's sake. I mean, you listen to Biden talk for more than 5 seconds, and you can tell he has no business being on a debate stage.
Well, and didn't
certainly
he
in an
promise in 2020 or so that he would only do one term?
So I've never fact checked that. A lot of people have said that. I don't know if he said that specifically. I know that was sort of the understanding, and he might have said it once or twice, but I don't know if it was ever like a firm promise, like I will only run for one term. If somebody in the comments wants to point to a video or something where he did, please do. I'm, very open to being corrected. But ultimately, you just can't convince me that you could see that man every day at work and think he's got this. And so and again, I hate talking about ifs because who cares? We are where we are. But I think if we had a robust primary leading up to this election, then I think there's a chance that we could have won this race. Where and I mean, on top of all this other stuff, the number one thing that Kamala Harris did, well, there's a bunch of things she didn't do. Again, I think that she did kind of fuck this campaign up a little bit. I think she did not run as good of a campaign as she could have. But also she was set out for failure from the beginning because Biden's been incredibly unpopular because for the last 4 years, the Democrats have done almost nothing. And that's a problem. And I think to myself, who was the last Democratic candidate that was popular? Barack Obama. Barack Obama was popular among voters, just popular among the American people, and he won. The last several candidates we've had, Biden was sort of barely above water during when the election was coming around. Kamala Harris was just a little bit below water. I think Kamala Harris was at like -1 net approval rating. Obviously, Donald Trump has never been positive approval rating. Donald Trump's, I think, usually sits around -10 points. And then you had Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton was the second most unpopular candidate in modern American history. And so I guess my thought is, what if we ran a candidate that people didn't hate?
What a novel idea.
Crazy idea, I know.
One of my Republican coworkers said, and this was months ago, he goes, I feel sorry for you guys in the Democrat Party. He said, you didn't get a primary at all. You didn't get to choose. And he's right. My views have gone far enough left that I'm just not going to be represented by anybody in the leadership. So I've kind of come to terms with that. But
one of the things that I think is, and I've heard this talked about a lot, the idea of identitarianism and looking at every single different category of people and thinking, how do we get this person? How do we get this group of people and this group of people? And I think the last several elections have shown that to be a fallacious way to run an election. Or to way to run a campaign, excuse me. And so this is where I kind of come around to what I think the Democratic Party needs to do. And I posted this on the Iowa Democratic Party Facebook page. We'll see if they get back to me. I am not holding my breath. And I think that what the Democratic Party needs to do is focus on the things that are important to middle and working class people. Because ultimately, if you were to ask most Republicans, hell, most of the people that voted for Trump, I don't think they believe that Trump is going to do much for them. I don't even know if they believe Trump when he talks most of the time. I don't know if anybody really believes Trump, even as his biggest fans.
Especially on like Reddit and Facebook posts in comments sections where people are answering, they firmly believe that Trump is going to do stuff for them. They believe that the economy is going to explode and that more jobs are going to come.
If you were to sit those people down and ask them, like, really get down to brass tacks, okay, what is Donald Trump going to do and how is that going to affect the economy? And I suspect that many of them would not be able to answer those questions.
No, but that's a different thing. They still believe that's going to happen. What they don't believe is they don't believe that he's going to implement 2025, Project 2025. They don't believe that women are going to lose the right to abortion. They don't believe that he's going to come for gay people or trans people. They don't believe any of that. And they've been telling a lot of leftist content creators, oh, you're just stuck in a bubble. None of that's going to happen. Get ready. It's going to be the best 4 years we've had in forever. And it makes me wonder, you were talking about speaking, Democrats need to speak to working class people. One of the big things Democrats used to run on, it was an absolute killer for them every time as far as in a good way, is the minimum wage. They used to talk about the minimum wage all the time. I can't tell you the last time any of them brought it up.
Well, they tried to pass the minimum wage under Joe Biden, and 6 Democrats voted against it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think maybe I'm talking about something different. Maybe believe isn't. I don't think they think. And again, obviously, when you're talking about Reddit or things like that, you are talking about a significantly smaller subset of the American people than the general populace.
Yeah.
I don't know if the average Trump voter thinks, "Oh, Trump's going to do a bunch of stuff that I like." I think they think he's probably going to make economy more. Like I think it's sort of just kind of a vague notion of like economy be bigger under Trump or something.
Well, I guess that's I think we're maybe saying the same thing. I think they believe Trump is going to do stuff for him. I don't know that they could point to how. It
Which is why
doesn't
for
seem
me-
like a lot of them know what a tariff is and what it's going to do to us.
It's all buzzwords and fuck your feelings and Trump.
But it's not entirely
I
that.
don't care about your
It's not entirely that, I don't think.
What's buzzwords?
There's such a divide. It's so black and white, so very much you're wrong, I'm right, and now I hate you. Instead of being like, no, you're a human being, I'm a human being, maybe we could talk about a few things, maybe we have some stuff in common. But no, as soon as you say you don't like Trump, well, you're the scum. Yeah, I don't want to talk to you. We're done.
By the way, first of all, I would mention, you mentioned minimum wage before, and I wanted to get this right. 2009. So there's been 15 years since they increased the minimum wage, and I believe that is the longest we've ever gone since there's been a minimum wage without increasing it. $7.25 an hour still. $7.25 an hour. So, Cale, I kind of want to address that. I think communication is a big problem. And this is one of the things that I think Kamala Harris fell down the most on. Again, if I was to sort of, the person who is in charge of directing policy and marketing for the Democratic Party, it would be focus on the important things that are important to everybody. So increase minimum wage, have an increased minimum wage in a decade and a half. It's ridiculous. If I was president and a Democrat tried to vote against the minimum wage, I would fucking eat his ass. I would rip him to fucking shreds, which Joe Biden didn't do. You know where two of the senators who voted against the minimum wage increase were from?
West Virginia.
Delaware.
Yep.
The two
Even
senators from the home state of the president voted against an increased minimum wage. That should be disqualifying for them. The president should be using the bully pulpit to go after them and be like, who are these people that are trying to kill your wage increase? I would have gone to West Virginia and I would have gone to Wheeling and I would have done a rally and I would have said, I'm trying to get you more pay and Joe Manchin's not letting me do it. You need to go to his office. You need to tell him to vote for this bill. It's like, I want to see some LBJ kind of tactics. Threaten these people. But so increased minimum wage, the allowing Medicare and Medicaid to negotiate drug prices is a no-brainer. They allowed it for, I think it was 10 drugs, a bunch of which were actually getting ready to get generics anyway. We need to increase that number. We need to get Medicare negotiating drug prices. That's going to save the average American a ton of money. We need to talk about childcare. There's a bunch of people that are not working right now because they can't afford to work. Because childcare is so expensive that it literally doesn't pay to go to work.
Yeah.
And these are people that want to go to work. These are people that literally would love to, just to get the hell out of the house for a couple hours a day. And they literally can't because childcare is so expensive. We are the only nation, the only developed nation on earth that does not guarantee medical and family leave. If you are having a baby, then you're not going to get paid. You're not going to get paid for anything. If you get the flu, if you get COVID, there is no law saying you have to get paid for those things.
Is it true that America is the only country in the world where people go into bankruptcy because of health care bills?
I mean, there's that's not entirely true. Our healthcare system is definitely the most expensive.
The industrialized, developed world, we're one of the worst as far as...
I can't give you the exact numbers, but it's bad. I mean, our healthcare system has huge problems.
Well, here's a personal example. My wife's inhaler in the States costs over $300. In Europe, it costs $7.
Well, I've told you guys this story before, but when I was in Medellin, I was in a hostel with another American. He got food poisoning. He went took a cab to the doctor, had his doctor's visit, took a cab to the pharmacist, picked up his prescription, took a cab back, $25 for the whole thing, including cabs and everything.
Yeah, our healthcare system is a goddamn hot mess. So again, all this stuff, and I think the one other thing I wanted to mention is on a kind of a personal note for me. I'm an Iraq War veteran. I'm a disabled veteran myself. Every time I saw Kamala Harris on stage with Liz fucking Cheney, I wanted to goddamn scream. Why the fuck is a Democrat on stage with Liz Cheney? Liz Cheney has no constituency. The only people that like Liz Cheney are Beltway pundits. It is guys that work for the Washington Post that write columns. That is the only person that likes Liz Cheney. She was obliterated in her primary. Republicans don't like Liz Cheney. Democrats don't like Liz Cheney. And veterans, I can tell you for fucking sure, don't like Liz Cheney.
Well, I mean, it's just yet more. I mean, I don't want everything to be optics. Sometimes ideas are going to be unpopular and you're going to have to serve them anyway. But that doesn't mean you have to go down the shittiest path of optics either. I mean,
it's incredibly stupid because it's bad tactically and in reality. Like,
yeah,
we should be going to Liz Cheney because she's a bad person. Also, nobody fucking likes Liz Cheney. What do you think you're going to win fucking Wyoming?
It gives you this impression that Kamala is only going to be speaking to the elite, to the insiders, and not speaking to working class people. And the one of the craziest things, I was going to bring this up, that is going to happen, is they're going to find a way to blame the true left again. But the actual left didn't have anything to do with her entire campaign. I mean, she ran as essentially a centrist. I mean, she doesn't really have any leftist policies. I mean, I suppose pro-choice is a left policy, but I wouldn't call it leftist. It's just pro-bodily autonomy. It doesn't seem outrageous.
It's an easy in. Like, okay, like a lot of people want this, so boom, I don't have to be super passionate about it. I'd just be like, yeah, I agree with that, so pick me. Instead of having...
That's the only thing I can point to. Everything else, every one of her policies that she bothered stating clearly are pretty centrist, not really going to do much for working class people who, right or wrong, have this impression that the economy is bad and that inflation is still high.
I think one of the problems is there is the conception, and I want to talk specifically about Michigan and also the war in Gaza, because I think that's really important to all this. There is an idea in the media, I think primarily, where, well, to win, you have to be as close to the center as possible. And I just think that most people don't vote based on where they are on the political spectrum. There are a huge number of people that were for Bernie Sanders in 2016 and ended up voting for Trump in 2020 and 2024. This idea of looking at the political spectrum as a thing of like, well, if you're the left, then you're always going to vote for the Democrat. And if you're on the right, you're always going to vote for the Republican. That's not true. I mean, we saw Bernie Sanders' numbers among independent voters in 2016 and 2020, and he was outpolling Biden and Clinton in both of those races. There is and this is more anecdotal, but you hear this all the time, and I've talked to people like this, where they said, I voted for Trump, but I would have voted for Bernie Sanders.
Well, and like...
So how do you
say that I am...
How do you square that circle? Like, explain that to me. How does that work? If you can say that somebody can go from Donald Trump to Bernie Sanders, but would never vote for Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris.
Well, again, it's like I said, maybe I'm in my own bubble, but I just don't know any centrists. And it's this, it's kind of, I think what you're saying is that you would vote for Trump or Bernie Sanders means that you would vote for a populist. You would vote for people that keep saying they're going to do stuff for you, and not the elite that nobody cares about and already has billions of dollars and doesn't matter if you do anything for.
I mean, the thing I've talked about, well, let me get back I want to talk about Michigan just briefly, because I think this is really important. So in 2020, Joe Biden won Dearborn, Michigan, 3-1. So I'm guessing 66 to 33%, right? So Biden wins that very, very handily. Kamala Harris got 28%. Excuse me, Kamala Harris got 28% of the vote in Dearborn, Michigan. I think you done fucked up. So what you have there is a very large Muslim population who, you'll be amazed, don't like it when another country is bombing fellow Muslims overseas at an incredible rate. And Kamala Harris was such a coward on that issue in this campaign.
Yep.
Because the thing is, here's the thing that is I think hard for people to understand. Nobody is really in favor of Israel. Like if you go to the people on the far right, like most of them don't like Israel for reasons which are maybe less comfortable to talk about. The people on the left are not in favor of the current war. Again, it's not about Israelis. It is about the right-wing government of Israel. It is about Benjamin Netanyahu is waging a war so he doesn't go to jail, which he should because he's corrupt. And so Kamala Harris basically just made no courageous stance anywhere on that issue. I mean, honestly, Joe Biden was probably further to the left of Kamala Harris on Israel, and specifically on the war in Gaza right now. That's shitty. That's a shitty way to run a campaign. It's not getting any. You're not getting any support. And I mean, think of it right here. So again, Kamala Harris's vote share in Dearborn, Michigan, dropped by, compared to where Biden's was, dropped by about 35 to 40%, which is big. It's real big. It's really, really big. I can't state enough how big that is. Well, if we look at the map, Kamala Harris lost Michigan by about 80,000 votes. Now, are you going to tell me just that alone, that position on Gaza alone, may have been the thing that lost her Michigan?
Well, how did Rashida Tlaib do? Did almost 70%.
She won. She won in huge numbers.
Yeah.
And so it is this cowardly way of campaigning where it's like, I'm going to try to campaign without changing anything or bothering anybody. And it's like, then you don't have a constituency. You don't. Because the thing is, the people that really run the show, the corporations, and the hedge funds, the people that basically fund all these campaigns, they're always going to vote for the Republican because the Republican's always going to cut their taxes more. So you're never going to actually compete on that level. What you do have the benefit of is having positions which are wildly popular. I mean, when you poll things like the minimum wage increase, when you poll things like paid family and medical leave, when you poll things like decreasing drug prices, these are hugely popular things. Hugely popular. Yeah, among Republicans, they're popular.
Strengthening unions.
Strengthening unions, which the Trump administration's already come out and said they're going to do everything they can to gut unions.
Yep.
I am a little frustrated. I think it was the Teamsters that didn't endorse, and I think they probably should have. I understand that Kamala is not my favorite person in the world, but I think the Biden administration, if you're going to give it credit on any issue, it has been, I think, better for unions than any administration for a significant period of time. Not perfect. Again, they broke up the railroad strike, and I think that was a bad idea. But they did end up getting the railroad strike or the railroad unions the time off they asked for. So again, I think that specific case is a bit of a mixed record, and I think that Biden's labor relations board has been pretty good overall. So if I was the head of the Teamsters Union, I would have probably endorsed Kamala Harris. Again, does that change anything? Probably not. I mean, again, maybe you change Michigan. Michigan's not enough by itself. So again, I don't think that probably would have changed things. And again, some of these numbers are pretty big. I mean, Pennsylvania, I think, was 100. I mean, Pennsylvania's like 150,000 votes, that's big. I mean, that's embarrassing. But still, it's all these little things that I think she should have done. And again, going back, I think that Biden should have never run again in the first place. I mean, that level of, because I remember this campaign and the level of gaslighting where you'd see Joe Biden on stage, and it's like, look, I don't want to make the making fun of old person jokes. I don't like that. I think it's ugly. But like, you watch this guy on stage and you're like, this guy shouldn't be here. This guy does not have the capacity to do this job. And it's not controversial. I mean, you have 10 people in a room that watch some of his press conferences, and they're going to say, oh my God, what's wrong with this guy? But it's all this just like, no, we're gonna just keep carrying on with what we've got, regardless of what reality says. It's so fucking frustrating.
I did hear somebody on a take on that say, but the Democrats, and they were talking more about like campaign strategists and the people that were running his campaign prior to Kamala's. They were saying they felt like Joe Biden should have been more popular. Okay, so what? Why are you tanking an entire
wish into one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up first? It is galling, because again, these are gettable voters. This is the one thing that people look at Donald Trump and see him as some kind of electoral juggernaut. Trump is a bad campaigner. I mean, he has a ceiling. Like, this is the most number of people that he could ever conceivably get to vote for him. And this isn't a huge win. I mean, it's a solid win, but it's not a landslide or anything.
I mean, you look at the last one. This is very close to the last numbers he drew. Donald Trump doesn't really gain that much in support.
No, he does not have a high ceiling. He has a high floor, which is, I think, why people are afraid. There's no situation where Donald Trump, if Donald Trump passed away tomorrow, he would still get 35% of the vote the next day. And that's just, set in stone. There's no way he would get less than that. But, imagine if, and again, I hate going back with these ifs. It's so frustrating to do. But imagine if we had a robust primary. I mean, I hear people throw on Pete Buttigieg's name. I think Pete Buttigieg would have been not a particularly good candidate. I think he's better in a debate, but I think Trump would debate him once and then never debate him again, and I don't think the debate would matter that much. But fine, if you're on the side of Petey Boots, as I call him, then go ahead, sure. And if he gets nominated, I'll vote for him. But let's have an actual primary where we get to pick somebody, not just say, hey, the guy who can't fucking complete a goddamn sentence is our winning champion because he won against Donald Trump. And let's briefly talk about 2020, because I think this is not said enough. Joe Biden beat Donald Trump when he was absolutely at his lowest popularity that he had ever been. And he was always low, but he was at the lowest because we're in the middle of COVID. And he barely won. I mean, we're talking by 40,000 votes in a couple of states. And otherwise Joe Biden isn't president. And he's going up against Trump at his weakest. So you're telling me the guy who could barely beat Trump at his absolute nadir, at his lowest point possible, that guy is somehow a political genius? And also this guy, by the way, who has lost the presidency, 3 times? I mean, Joe Biden ran for president a bunch of times, and he never got close. He didn't even get close to the nomination. It's the gaslighting. I think that's what maybe is the most frustrating about all of it, is having these sort of politicos and these people in power look down at you and say, shut up, this is our guy. And my response is, who the fuck are you?
Yeah, and they just will not. I mean, so I got convinced, and I think rightfully so, to vote for Kamala, because in the end, there was only 2 people that could win. It was either Trump or Kamala. And a vote for a third party is a vote for Trump, because Trump doesn't really gain much in the way of voters. I would
push back on that a little bit, but continue.
But you're taking away from the only person that could win. But I really wanted to vote for the socialist. I really wanted to vote for Claudia de la Cruz. She is so much closer to what I want, and yet she is virtually unknown. Everybody knows, or at least has heard of Jill Stein, and I can't tell you a single good thing about Jill Stein.
Well, Jill Stein's sort of your consummate other vote. Yeah. I'm voting for other.
I just it drives me nuts. Then, like somebody was pointing out today, tariffs are bad. Like China's not going to pay the tariffs. We're going to pay the tariffs, and the businesses aren't going to just absorb that cost and have lower profit. They're going to pass on that cost to us.
Well, I would say probably when it comes to tariffs, I think tariffs are very complicated. And I think that there are probably situations where increasing tariffs might make sense, situations where they don't make sense. The one thing that I can say for absolutely sure is that Donald Trump does not have the intellectual complexity to decide where tariffs should go up and where tariffs should go down.
My understanding of it is, in the world that we live in, when a company incurs a new cost, they just pass that on to
Well, it
either.
depends. I mean, if you're looking capitalism, it's like, will the market bear that increase in price? Again, and I think we're kind of to the point now where we kind of have this crony capitalism, where the government is sort of helping to support corporations, which is ugly.
Yeah.
And corporations pass on everything to us. Again, like just anecdotally, I've stopped going to McDonald's. I mean, I should have stopped going to McDonald's for health reasons because it's not good. But when my wife and I were on a trip, we got a breakfast there, and it was $28 for McDonald's breakfast.
Jesus.
I mean, no, fuck you. 28 McDonald's breakfast is not worth $28. And so that's a situation where I think I would be amazed if McDonald's doesn't see some pretty significant decreases in revenue, because, like, why? Who the fuck's paying that for that shitty food? I mean, don't get me wrong. I will enjoy a McDonald's breakfast burrito every so often, but it's not good. It's not good food at all. And so now it's like it's bad and it's expensive. No, thank you. No, thank you, sir. But I think that's something that a lot of people say. You know, all these increases in prices across. I mean, everything is so fucking expensive right now. It's insane. And I mean, Kamala Harris did start to talk about some of the corporate price gouging, which is good. But again, towards the end of the campaign, I just feel like everything she was saying was Trump is evil and here's my friend Liz Cheney. And it's just such a fucking shitty campaign strategy. Kale, you talk. I've been talking too much.
All right. Well, like I said, I've been mostly avoiding politics for a while, but I mean, I can't completely avoid it because, you know, it's around us. Life is everything is politics. I've told my wife that before. Everything is politics. There's politics in everything, and she's like, "Oh no, there isn't. No, there isn't," because she didn't want to hear about it. And then she got to a point to where she was like, "Okay, well, this is interesting, and this is interesting." But anyway, that's a whole side story. Yeah, I think that we're in for some dark times, and I'm sorry I'm not contributing much to the conversation because it's hard for me to say, you know, okay, well, things are going to get shitty, but I don't really want to think that things are going to get shitty. Like, I mean, I hope it works out.
Maybe everything will be fine.
But I doubt it.
No, I get it. I mean, that's kind of why I wanted to set this up, because I didn't have a plan for, like, specifically what I wanted to say. I'm kind of this is just stuff that I'm kind of just, you know, stream of consciousing.
Well, you said you wanted to talk about the election, and I thought maybe that would be like a segment of it. I don't know if I want to spend the whole time talking about the election.
But I think that it's the thing of the hour.
Okay.
It's like, so my mom is unfortunately had to go into a nursing home over the past year or so, and we've been dealing with all that, which is just the American healthcare system is just such a dream, such a great thing, and it treats people so humanely. So the one thing that I've said to her a lot is there's a scene in Demolition Man, and I don't know, I get inspiration from weird things. There's a scene in Demolition Man where they have these, what do they call them, glow sticks? And they asked,
yeah.
I think it's Benjamin Bratt, of all people. Stallone's like, what are these things? And he's like, they're glow sticks. And he's like, do they work? And he's like, they're what we got. And I feel like that's what I think about so many things here in the United States. It's like, you got a healthcare system. Does it work? And it's like, well, it's what we got.
Yeah.
And so every time we have to go through some shitty thing with her at the nursing home, I just always tell her, it's like, this is what we got. It's what we got.
Well, and it's so obviously better other places. and equally obvious that a lot of Americans don't travel and leave their country much. I was talking to Court today. It's my sister's birthday. I was talking to her a lot today, and she was telling me that now they have these electric trains in Chile where they can hop on one of their cheap buses to the electric train thing and make it into Santiago, no problem. Super fast, very cheap. It's just like, and they have universal health care. I mean, give me those two things. Give me universal health care and public transportation. Give me a candidate that makes those two things important, and I guarantee you pick up voters.
So we live here in Iowa, and I did the number. I don't have the numbers right in front of me right now, but I'll do them as close as I can remember. Let's say you're somebody who's looking for a job. Obviously, if you're looking for a job, you have to look for a job somewhere that's within commuting distance. If we had a high-speed rail, you could get from Des Moines to Omaha in, I think, about 30 minutes. That means all of a sudden, if you're looking for a job, you just opened up where you can look for a job at. Because you could live in Des Moines and work in Omaha. It would be, I think, about an hour or so to get to Minneapolis. It would be like an hour and a half to get to Chicago. It would be like about an hour to get to Kansas City. I mean, this opens up travel to everyone. This opens up the mobility of labor. I mean, that's a big deal. If all of us, let's say you're working at a fast food place in Des Moines, and all of a sudden you could hop on a high-speed rail and be in Kansas City in an hour and make, significantly more money. All of a sudden now it's equalizing what employers have to pay their employees. And this is something we can do, and we know this because they do it in Japan, they do it in Europe, they do it everywhere. They just don't do it here.
Well, if you added in. I was trying to explain this to a guy at work. Say, the number they used to throw out for healthcare was roughly equal to about the amount we pay in healthcare expenses already. For universal healthcare is about the amount of money that insured people pay out per year already. So you gain two things immediately if you go to universal healthcare. You gain everybody gets covered, and you gain the freedom to leave your job. If you don't like the job you're at, or they're closing down the plant, or, I guess in that regard, you'd have to leave anyway. But if you don't like the job, or your boss is terrible, or it's a long commute over icy roads, which is something we have to deal with a lot here. Now, all of a sudden, even if you're paying one for one, dollar for dollar, from, you didn't get any raise. The money you spent on premiums goes directly to the money spent on taxes. Now, all of a sudden, you still gain something. You still gain that freedom. You get that ability to go find a different job. If you throw in public transportation, if you throw in bullet trains, now, all of a sudden, you gain that freedom to go find a different job somewhere else that, like you were saying, now has to normalize pay across the board or lose people to it.
Yeah, and I want to clarify one thing I said earlier. When I talked about, when I said the people who really run the country, I want to make clear, I'm not talking about some sort of a shadowy cabal. This isn't a conspiracy. What I'm saying is that the CEO of General Motors and the CEO of Facebook and the CEO of Zoom or whoever, they're not sitting in a smoke-filled room telling the politicians what to do. What they're doing is they all want the same thing. What they want is workers to have less power, and they want them to have more power. And unfortunately, workers, by and large, can't really buy politicians. Unions do not have the power they once did, and even when they were at their most powerful, they still weren't as powerful as corporations. So it's not like, the CEOs are getting together, although they actually do kind of get together sometimes. But it's an understanding of the establishment.
I will say
The establishment wants everything to stay the same. And just they pay less taxes every year.
I got pretty excited when that UAW guy announced his campaign for president, but then that kind of just fizzled out pretty quickly. I was like, wow, this guy actually wants to do something for working people, and everybody's just ignoring him.
Well, and I can't remember, it wasn't Sean Fain, I think it was Teamsters, who actually spoke at the Republican National Convention. Which a lot of people were very upset at him for. I don't know. I mean, if he took it, he gave a very, very progressive speech at the Republican National Convention. I don't think I'd spit on that or throw that away. I think that's an important thing, and got cheers. Like, he's sitting there talking about progressive stuff and got cheers. So, again, I think it's a longer discussion and a more important discussion of, like, where do you reach out, where do you not reach out, and I think that's a complicated question. I think some people try to make it seem simple on both sides. You know, so I've been a Young Turks viewer for many, many years, and I've had a lot more problems with them recently because their sort of stance is always go on everybody and always have everybody on. And it's like, okay, I understand that it's important to talk to people across the aisle, but I don't care what Dr. Phil thinks. And I don't think I'd bring him on my show because I don't think that has value. I think if you bring Ben Shapiro on, maybe that's a more interesting conversation. Is it good to sit here and talk to Ben Shapiro, even though you know you're not going to get any of his supporters? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question exactly, but there is a line there. But I think in this case, yeah, if you have a firebrand pro-union guy at the Republican convention, maybe you're going to open up some eyes. Maybe you won't. I don't know. I think it's a complicated question.
All right.
The other thing I was going to talk about.
So hold on, I've been kind of wondering about this.
Go ahead.
So a lot of what used to be considered moderates on the Republican side are mostly gone. Like it's a largely Trump ultra conservative Christian nationalist. These kind of people are kind of in power. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, all of these people are that way. What happened to the ones that were moderate? My guess is they are now Democrats. We know a guy that has done this, who is still relatively, at least financially conservative, but doesn't like a lot of the culture war hate, and has gone to the Democrats, but in many ways are still conservative. And I think, you hear about like people in other countries saying, oh, well, even for, what you guys think of on the left as Democrats are still pretty right-wing compared to what we think of. And it makes me wonder, maybe they keep going for centrists because that's what they think their party is.
Well, I think that there is one way I've sort of illustrated this is, I don't know, we are both maybe just old enough to have at some point in our youth played pickup stakes. I think maybe I played it at church camp or something like that. So for the uninitiated, pickup sticks is a very simple game, as all games used to be, where you have a bunch of equal length sticks and you drop them on the ground together in kind of a lump. And the point is you want to try to pick up a stick without touching any of the other sticks. And the problem with American politics is it is pickup sticks because we have all these problems. But you can't touch one problem without that problem touching two other problems. And you have this sort of interconnected nature of the problems we deal with. By the way, I would say, unfortunately, Kel had to drop out. His phone had died on him, and he is in a place where his internet is not very good. But I can tell you he definitely says goodbye, and he is sad he can't continue the discussion. And we appreciate him coming on for as long as he could. And so I think one of the problems that is the biggest with the Democratic Party is if you look at the main constituency of the Democratic Party, it has been moving farther and farther away from middle class sort of people with just a high school education for many years now. The sort of middle educated people, I'm not sure what the exact name for it, but high school educated people without a college degree, have been moving away from the Democratic Party in significant numbers over the past decade, maybe more. And I think that's a big, big problem. I think it is largely because the Democrats have not proved themselves to be a force in people's lives. And the only thing they know about the Democratic Party is, oh, I pay these fees, even though obviously fees aren't just from the Democrats, fees are from everybody. All as they think is like, well, they just want to increase my taxes. And it's like Bernie Sanders said, I think it was in 2020. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 2020. And is trying to tell people, about universal health care. And it's like, yes, your taxes are going to go up a little bit, but here's the thing. You know, all that fucking money you're giving to your employer every 2 weeks for your health insurance, that goes away. So
Yeah.
if your taxes go up by $500 a year, but now all of a sudden you're not paying $200 every 2 weeks for your health care, that's a fucking deal. Because yeah, that extra $500 in taxes sucks, but it's more than made up. It's made up for in 6 weeks of your paychecks being bigger. But it's trying to explain this sort of complex thing, and the sort of consultants. This is one thing that I think is a big deal, is the sort of consultants, the consultant class of telling Democrats you need to spend money on campaign ads on television, even though people aren't watching television anymore. Like those ad dollars just aren't as effective as they used to be. You got to be more creative. You got to try to find a way to spend online and spend in these sort of niche environments. But again, these consultants, they're making their commissions on selling these TV ads, and that's what they're going to continue to do.
Well, you've brought up to drive the conversation a little bit more and not get stuck in the mud. You brought up Bernie Sanders a couple of times. He is no spring chicken himself. Who do you see carrying his mantle?
I mean, that's tough to say. Tim Walz is also not a young person. I think, by the way, another thing that I think the Harris campaign really did is I feel like Tim Walz was locked up in a basement somewhere for half the damn campaign. And Tim Walz was good.
Yeah, he came out.
The whole weird thing. Great. I mean, that whole calling J.D. Vance weird, that was effective. That was really effective for voters because J.D. Vance is fucking weird.
Yeah.
He is weird. Look at him. He's a weird guy. Why is he wearing all that eyeliner? It's strange. But then I feel like after the beginning of the campaign, like Tim Walz is like, literally in a basement playing video games with AOC, which that was, I think, a good thing to do. But like he's not out there. Like I'm not seeing Tim Walz every other day.
It was like after the vice presidential debate, he just disappeared.
And he didn't do very well in the vice presidential debate, but he didn't do terribly. And also, here's the thing. Nobody gives a shit about the vice presidential debate. It doesn't matter. Like, I understand why we do it, but it literally has no effect on anything. I mean, if you have the most disastrous debate performance in vice presidential debate history, your number's going to go down by like half a point. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares about the vice president. Unless they're doing something interesting.
The crazy thing is, I watched several leftist debaters. I know we can win those things. Like, if you had a real debate with people who knew their issues, I know the left can win those. I think you could put on a 3-hour debate on YouTube hosted by, I can't remember his name, James, with the presidential candidates. I guarantee you'll get some real answers. I'll guarantee you move around and, people will watch that. Especially voting age people will watch that.
But I don't think you're a debate. You like debates. You like to watch debates.
Yeah.
And this is something we could debate and did in fact once. I think debate is interesting. I don't know if it's persuasive to many people. Again, I'm not going to get into it. Again, it's a debate thing, and I don't agree to debate. So, but anyway, I think what I would do, again, if I was the candidate and I'm debating, again, don't try to push something that everybody already knows. So Donald Trump is a racist. Yeah. That's why a bunch of people are actually voting for him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a deal breaker for a lot of them.
And it's not going to help. So what I would do if I'm out there is be like, I'm going to talk about paid family medical leave. I'm going to talk about childcare. I'm going to talk about decreasing drug prices. I'm going to talk about increasing the minimum wage. Because I'm going to talk to you about the 4 things that I'm going to do to improve the lives of every single American who's making less than $10 million a year. So Donald Trump and his cronies can come out and say all the crazy tinfoil hat things. Yeah, that's funny, Donnie. You're a failed businessman. You're a failed president. Whatever. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about getting every American affordable childcare. I'm going to talk about getting every American affordable drug prices. And I'm going to try to talk about increasing everybody's wages. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to sit here and say what I'm going to do for you. Because I think that most of the American people, most of the middle class, they don't see the Democratic Party as a party that does things for them.
So maybe your answer is I don't know. You don't know who is both.
Oh, right. No, sorry, I didn't get back to that.
charismatic enough.
I mean, it seems like I guess you'd say AOC is probably the odds-on favorite. I think she's pretty good. I think she's sharp. I mean, obviously, I like Rashida Tlaib a lot. She'd probably be my choice, but
I'm a big Tlaib
maybe the
fan.
most
Yeah.
popular. I don't know. I think I don't know is probably the best answer because I don't. I think there's a lot of people you could see. I mean, Tim Walz. I think Tim Walz wasn't great in the debate, but I think he's a great campaigner. Like he campaigned really. He was a very effective campaigner. And he found a lot of ways to get under the skin of JD Vance and make them look flustered, which I think ultimately is something. The only thing you can do to really hurt him is to make them look like if they look like they're afraid, then that's you're doing your job. So yeah, Tim Walz, AOC, Rashida Tlaib is not. She has a Muslim name, so she's out. Which I say sort of facetious. I don't think that's entirely true, but I think it is at least partially true. I don't know. I mean, I would like to see a lot more progressives from the South, pardon the pun, rise up. Because I think there's a lot of really, really good progressives in the South. I think it's one of those things that I had a discussion with somebody where I talked about how much I like going down to Kentucky. I like going down to Tennessee. I like going there. It's just, it's the people are really nice. I feel very welcome down there. And to be honest, I don't feel that way in a lot of other places. I mean, I thought that Portland, Oregon was the most unwelcoming city that I've ever been to in my life. And I include Baghdad in that. Because I think that, if you look like somebody like Andy Bashir, who, obviously Andy Bashir was sort of considered as a running mate for a little while and didn't get it. But this is a Democrat who's won statewide in Kentucky twice.
Yeah.
Why are we not talking to him to see what the fuck he's doing down there? Why don't we talk to the people that are winning, in Atlanta? The progressives that are winning in Atlanta. I think that right now the Democratic Party is spinning its wheels in mud, and it's just continuing to spin its wheels, and it's not doing anything different. And I think it's a big problem.
Okay, so shortly before the election, Sunday or Monday before, I listened to a guy that was saying that he used to be on. It was a YouTube video, I believe. He was saying he used to be, when he was younger, on the right. He fell down the alt-right pipeline on YouTube and stuff like that, and started listening to Alex Jones and Andrew Tate and all these, Jordan Peterson, all these terrible people. And he said a lot of it really was that it felt edgy. That he was like the rebellious one they're saying the hard truths and all that kind of thing. And it makes me wonder, to me, it seems like this is just another problem for the Democrats as they maintain this kind of safe centrism. If there was even one person that was saying something edgy, like if one Democrat was say, yeah, I'm for open borders. Yeah, or say, there's one of the guys I listen to on YouTube a lot. His name's Jimmy Snow. He was saying, I'm for an Ellis Island style policy. Let's bring him in, but right there, vet him. Say, okay, this one has a criminal record. He has to go back. But all these workers here are just fine. Put him on a super fast express route to citizenship and get him in here. Workers only make the country better.
Well, I think that what you would have to do if you're going to say that, because again, that's going to be wildly unpopular. I'm not saying you're wrong, but it's going to be unpopular. Is you have to say that you have to addend that with the federal government is going to provide the necessary resources to make sure that people, that the local entities can have housing and everything for these people. So again, if we send, there was that town in Ohio that Trump said that the people were eating cats and dogs, which was horseshit. But like, if the argument there would have been, hey, here's the real argument: is who is going to pay for the cost of getting people settled and getting them the things they need to survive, until they're on their feet. And that's where the federal government needs to step in and be like, okay, we are going to provide housing or something, assistance to the local entity, and say, you're not going to be bearing the brunt of this cost by yourself. This is the country doing it, and the country needs to be responsible for it. I think on top of that, again, just talk about popular things. One of the things, so I've been reading a lot lately. I read Character Limit, which is a book that I highly recommend people listen to. It is a book sort of about Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter. And if you think that Elon Musk is a genius, you need to read this book. Because Elon Musk is not a genius. Elon Musk is a moron. Elon Musk is one of the most unintelligent people. He's a marketing guy. That's what he does. He markets.
Take one more. Say the name clearly and who it's by.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Character Limit: How Elon Musk Destroyed Twitter by Kate Conger and Ryan Mack. It is, again, it just talks about what happened. And what happened is, so I'm not going to go through the whole book, but I think that it should be illustrative to have at least point out one thing, like, how is Elon Musk stupid? Like, I'm saying Elon Musk is stupid. What is my support for that proposition? Again, there's a million things in the book, and I'm not going to go through all of them. But here's one thing, and this is incredibly important. If you are a corporation or a company, the most important thing, the most valuable thing you can imagine is your company name being accepted into the lexicon as something. Kleenex. You can't buy marketing that fucking powerful. When everybody goes to the store and they have a cold, they buy Kleenex and they use Kleenex. Now, again, we know it's actually facial tissue, but nobody calls it facial tissue. So that the level of value that you place on having your company name being attached to something like that. Twitter had tweets. That was accepted by everybody. Everybody knows what a tweet is. Like, it's tweet. And Elon Musk decided to change the name because he had a company very early on in his career that didn't basically pan out at all, called X, and he decided to get rid of that. So they had this valuable thing that every company would absolutely kill for, that every company would literally, in their marketing budget, pays millions and millions of dollars to try and get. And he threw it in the garbage. Because he's an idiot. Because he's not a smart man.
He went for this school-age edginess, like X, X, and it's like black and white. It's so dumb. It's so cringe.
You've destroyed the value that it is so embarrassingly. Again, I'm not a capitalist person. I'm not into that. But if you are, then you know that having that is just indescribably valuable, an indescribably valuable thing. I mean, how much, if let's say you started up a facial tissue company, how much would you pay if you could just write a check and say, now everybody's not going to call it Kleenex, they're going to call it, Brandon face wipes. Like, you would pay billions, and you would be an idiot to not pay billions for that.
Yeah.
He threw that in the garbage because he's a moron.
Agreed. But in order to separate yourself out and get this kind of, because to me, nothing is more not edgy. Nothing is less punk than being a Republican. You're being a conservative. You're being a reactionary. I mean, by definition, you are not being anti-establishment. You are being the establishment. So, I think
one of the things that you'll see a lot of like edgelords that read The Art of War quote. They'll be like, "Attack your enemy where they are weak." And I think, much as I respect Sun Tzu and all he did, I think in the current media landscape, no, that's wrong. Attack your enemy where they're strong. So again, if I was going to attack Donald Trump, which again, I wouldn't spend most of my time doing, I would spend most of my time going everywhere I could, going on every single show. Again, it's controversial to say, she probably should have gone on Joe Rogan. I don't like Joe Rogan. I think Joe Rogan is one of the dumbest people that I've ever heard speak.
He's at least as dumb as Elon Musk.
He's dumber. He's dumber than Elon Musk, which is saying something, because Elon Musk is very dumb. He might be dumber than Donald Trump. I don't know.
And now, no respect for The Undertaker either. Fuck that guy.
Don't even get me started. Briefly get into wrestling. He's always been a company man. He's always supported Vince McMahon. It's not that surprising. Yeah. And Vince McMahon's always been a big Donald Trump fan. No, so if I was going to attack Donald Trump, I would say he's a shitty businessman. This guy can't run a business to save his fucking life. This guy literally started, he had a successful casino in Atlantic City, and then you know what he did? He opened up another casino across from it. How the fuck stupid do you have to be? You know what happened? They cannibalized each other and they both failed. He literally lost in the industry. There is an industry of the casinos where they say the house always wins. He managed to not win as the house. It's literally the thing they say that you can't possibly lose, and he lost.
Well, and they say, you know, I guess he was successful as a game show host. But to me, being a game show host is as slimy as being a used car salesman. It's literally,
First of all, he wasn't even successful as being a game show host. It was his production company that did all that. Donald Trump didn't do anything. It was the production company that did all that. It was all artifice. And so again, so if I was going to attack, the first thing I would attack him on is like, he doesn't know shit about business. He's a fucking liar. He's always been somebody who comes in and talks shit. And I think I would personalize this. I would say, you know this guy. You all know this guy. Everybody knows somebody in their life that, oh, I've got this big thing brewing. It's this big opportunity. It's going to blow up. And it never fucking does. And that's Donald Trump, except for, imagine that guy had his father give him $400 million. And then had NBC give him another half $1 billion.
he is more ridiculously Teflon than any mafia boss I've ever seen.
He's not Teflon. He's just spineless.
Nothing.
He's not like
he's never going to go to jail.
Yeah, which he's not now. He won't go to jail.
But I still want to know, though, what would be your one, I don't know, out there, radical, edgy leftist policy that you think you could win over some people just by being so out of the norm that alone could be like...
I think it would be this. And this is just coming out of my head right now, so it's not like fully, elucidated or anything. It would be, your boss is an asshole.
Yeah.
Because that's something that everybody's boss is a fucking asshole. Like, sure, some people have good bosses, but what the fuck do they know?
Oh my God, Kamala could have said that and meant it.
Right, yeah, her boss is an asshole. By the way, that's one thing. If she could have just come out anti-Biden on one fucking thing.
Yeah, almost anything, really.
It's this idea of constantly playing everything so goddamn safe, and it's a loser. You have to take risks if you're going to win. And yeah, but come out there and because that's something we all agree with. Like, everybody's got a boss who's like, geez, that fucking idiot doesn't know his fucking asshole from his ear hole. And why is he in charge? He's a fucking moron. What are we doing here? And saying, I am going to protect you from your fucking asshole boss. That's what my policy is. So that's where all this stuff comes from. Increased minimum wage, decreased drug prices, paid family medical leave. What's that?
Universal healthcare.
Universal healthcare. Unionization. I want to protect you from your asshole boss. Tell me you wouldn't have 1 million people have a bumper sticker that says, I'm going to protect you from your asshole boss. Because that's the thing. Because right now, everybody wants to get paid by the bosses. All the politicians want to get paid by the bosses. The reason Kamala Harris didn't come out against Netanyahu is because she knew AIPAC would spend, $500 million against her. But the thing is, that's where you come out and say, I would come out and say, I am coming out here to say, fuck you, AIPAC. You do not run me. I am here for the American people, not the Israeli people. And if you want to come out here and spend $500 million, I got one word to say to you. Bring it. I guess 2 words, actually, but bring it. Bring it on. I want to see all your negative ads, and I want the American people to see that you are telling us, no, America doesn't come first, Israel comes first. And we can have that debate. We can have that debate of who comes first. And I suspect that I will win that debate. But yeah, I think I will protect you from your asshole boss. That's my official campaign slogan. Yep. Your boss is an asshole, and I'm going to try to protect you from him.
It's just edgy enough and still reasonable. My edgiest ideas are not usually the most reasonable ones. My favorite one is, as long as we are going to remain an empire, as long as we are going to remain the sole superpower in the world, voting should be extended to the whole world. Everybody gets a vote for a U.S. president.
I suspect that will not get widespread support. But no, I think, yeah, I mean, protect, because the thing is, and we get back to the identitarian stuff. I mean, I remember this whole thing of, one of the first black press secretaries, black women press secretaries under Biden. Her name is Jean-Baptiste, right? And the sort of celebration of, oh, look, we've done this, and it's like, but maybe we should talk about the fact the press secretary is a fucking liar. The fact that every press secretary under every president their job is to go out in front of the press and lie to them constantly. And so I don't care who does that job. And so I think that the identitarian stuff, it does frustrate people, and I don't think it helps anything. That's why I think the biggest identity that I can think of to appeal to, and the identity that is shared by the most people in this country, and that is workers. We're all fucking workers. And before you say, oh, I'm just a housewife, no, you're working too.
Yeah.
You're taking care of kids, you're washing dishes, you're washing clothes. That's work, that's labor. Just because you're not getting a paycheck for it, doesn't mean you're not a worker. Everybody's a worker.
Well, and I've heard the point before that can be a little like class reductionist, like you're reducing, gay and trans and all this and their experience. But maybe you have to start with the broader picture. Maybe you have to envelop it.
The thing is, if you're a trans person, you have a fucking asshole boss. I know you do.
And you're working. Yeah.
Because I'm not leaving you out. Now, and again, that doesn't mean we're saying, okay, discrimination's okay from here on out. No, absolutely not. What I'm saying is what we're focusing on is affecting the greatest number of Americans possible and having the greatest positive impact on them. Right. I mean, again, imagine you could just get guaranteed paid family and medical leave. I mean, that would be...
I think class reductionism is a decent idea. It's something to talk about, but I don't think it's step one. I think step one is appealing to the worker base, because of the three types of power, like political, money, and population. Population's the biggest. It's the hardest to overcome if everybody were united. Like, if everybody were united, there wouldn't be military power, because the military all comes from the sons of the workers. There wouldn't be money, because it would, we could just say, until this is over, we're not using it anymore. And propaganda, if we had already all come together, then propaganda wouldn't work. We would already have passed that filter. So that's the reason that they have to keep initiating this race stuff and this anti-trans and this homophobia and all this, because they have to keep us divided. So to start uniting, we really have to go for the biggest class. And I know there's going to be a lot of Trump people that say, that's what we're doing. We're going for the working class. Except you're ignoring all the people in your party that actually have the power right now. You're ignoring the billionaires and the Christian nationalists.
I think that what I would tell those people is, do this for me. Ask the question, what are you doing for my wallet? Because when you listen to Trump speeches, when you listen to a lot of the right-wing speeches, they will talk about trans people. They'll talk about this, that, the other thing, all these things. But ask specifically, what are you doing for my wallet? And I will tell you, if you ask me, as since I've been made the nominee of the Democratic Party this year, apparently, I'm going to make sure you pay less for drug prices. I'm going to make sure you pay less for childcare. I'm going to make sure, especially if you're at the lower end, if you're a minimum wage worker, you make more money. So I'm putting money in your pocket. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put money in your pocket. So go talk to the other guy and ask him, how are you going to put money in my pocket? And it's just that simple.
Along that same lines, what do you think? Would it be advantageous for a candidate to spend, say, 3 hours on a live stream somewhere, breaking it down, going, this is the power of the president. This is what I already know I can do.
The answer to that question is important, and I think that campaigning is so much more difficult than it used to be, because one of the problems, and this is one I was going to mention this, and I actually thankfully you brought that up, because this brings up a huge problem with the country today, and this is, I think, the problem that I have no real ideas how to get around. I mean, except for just putting yourself out there constantly, and that is the increasing atomization of this country. If you go back to 1963, there was 3 anchors, and you were going to get your news from one of those 3 anchors, and you would get your news from the newspaper of record in your particular city or the New York Times. And so you had these gatekeepers. And what does that mean? So gatekeepers, are gatekeepers good or bad? Yes, they're both. So let's say, for example, in the medical field, you don't want everybody to just be like, I'm a doctor now, I'm going to operate on you. No, we need some fucking gatekeepers.
Yeah.
When it comes to the news, it's complicated, because it is good to have gatekeepers to some degree. Because I don't think that people should be trusting Steven Crowder or Ben Shapiro or Bill O'Reilly or any of these people, because they are disingenuous. And I think, in my opinion, not saying that this is not actionable, I find them to be liars. I find that they say a bunch of bullshit. But also, when there are too many gatekeepers in the media, then there's a lot of just truths that never get out, because the people in that industry will just never elucidate them. And so I think the hardest thing today, if you're running a campaign for president, is how do I reach out to all these different groups of people that have sort of encased themselves in these online cocoons, where they're only seeing this incredibly narrow media that they see. And how do you solve that? Fucked if I know. I think it's difficult. It's incredibly difficult. Like, how do you reach out to, let's say, for example, as the progressive candidate who has all these sort of populist policies, what if I wanted to reach out to incels online?
Yeah.
Because that's potentially a demographic that could help you. I mean, really reaching those people, because I mean, the incel community is frustrating, dangerous, scary, and a community that I think needs help, I think. But how do you reach out to incels, and how do you reach out to all these different groups of people online? Because again, there's this such atomization.
Well, and I've heard people say the easy answer is media literacy, but it turns out that's not really an easy answer. And
No,
as AI gets more and more sophisticated, it's going to be harder and harder to prove what is reality and what isn't.
But also, how do you get from A to B there? I mean, yes, I would agree, media literacy, having better media literacy is a good thing, but like, it's like the old joke, you can't get there from here.
Well, I guess that's kind of what I was wondering. Say you live streamed a 3-hour session on like both Twitch and YouTube.
Right, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't get back to what your original question was. Yes, do that. Go on everything. Go everywhere.
Well, and
now, admittedly,
spend that time laying it out. Like, spend that time not just saying things, not just saying, "Oh, I want to pressure the legislative to do this," because you're not going to do that. Lay out what powers you have, what you can affect, show it in the live stream, and then say, "I can affect these things, and I will do these things that will help the working class people."
I mean, do a fireside chat. Say, okay, if I'm running for office, I am going to do a 2-hour live stream at least once every 2 weeks. I'm going to do a 2-hour live stream, and I'm going to talk about what I'm going to do. And I'll take a few questions. It's not going to be open, because you can't go down that road.
No, but you could do different hosts. You could have a left-wing host one time, and then like have a right-wing host. If let it see that they are asking you questions that their side thinks is going to be tough for you, and you'll just mark it out.
I think the other thing that I would do, and again, this is kind of why I want to do this. I feel like doing this, like, it makes you think and it makes you talk. So I don't know what I'm going to say until I say it. I think sometimes, like, that's how my brain kind of works. What I would ask people in the audience when they ask questions, don't ask me questions about this large policy. Ask me something about your life. Because ultimately, as an elected official, I am looking at you and your wife and your brother and your siblings, and you know, I'm looking at, so you need to tell me your thing, because there's so much stuff in the media now that says, well, don't worry about you, worry about this greater thing. It's like, no, worry about you. Tell me about you. What is your economic situation? Are you receiving disability? Are you working? Do you have kids? Are you receiving benefits? Like, tell me about your, what would improve your, you tell me what would improve your situation. Like,
Well,
you think your disability
and
benefits
even
should be higher?
overarching, because you could certainly do that on a live stream, and I think that'd be very effective. But you could go in. I mean, it's at some point it becomes simple, obvious numbers. There's got to be like a top three things that would affect the most amount, like pragmatically speaking, a top three things that most economically affect the most amount of people in the U.S. You know, that's probably like healthcare, gas, and something else. You could probably have those three things as lined, like say on your first live stream, have those three things as lined out as you can, to where you could even timestamp your videos. You could always go, hey, go watch this video. It's at 52 minutes and 39 seconds where I start talking about that. It's got it all mapped out, literally step by step on how I can do this. And it's within my power to do it. And then you do a couple of those 2-hour live streams every 2 weeks, or maybe even every week. Maybe you forego physically door knocking or going to someplace and actually do these, and have them call in and say, what is specifically wrong with your life and what could I do to help as a president?
Well, that actually brings up a secondary point, that how effective is in-person campaigning in a world where we are painfully online?
I think much
Again,
less.
if you I mean, imagine the difference between spending 2 weeks in the Philadelphia suburbs and the Pittsburgh suburbs, you know, the state you need to win, versus really preparing and actually, I mean, hire a production team to make it not only be informative, but be good, look good. And it's like, it sort of brings to mind, makes me think, like, who's going to be the first YouTube president?
Yeah.
And I think the first person that, because again, I feel like of truly, you know, here, I'll take somebody that I specifically don't actually like. So Jenks Uygur on the Young Turks, his nephew, Hassan Piker, who is very, very woke bay. I'm sorry, I'm not a fan. It's not political. It's just, I don't care for him. But I mean, he's incredibly popular. He has a huge following.
Yeah.
And if you could give me a politician with just like 1/100th of that level of sort of social media, YouTube savvy, to run for office, they're going to destroy Trump.
Yeah, the ability. Well, that's what I was saying. Do both Twitch and, because I mean, both of those places record those videos, so you can show them later on.
Well, here actually, so they just did the Tim Walz and AOC played. What was it, Madden 2024 or whatever?
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, AOC is the nominee. Imagine she has a Twitch stream that runs for 2 hours on, you know, Saturday night, and she brings another person in to play a game with once a week. And as long as she's smart, and again, here it's really quality of the candidate. You have to have a candidate that you're not trying to hide. And I mean, that was the problem with Joe Biden, and I think that was to some degree the problem with Kamala Harris, which I found to be a little mystifying, because I feel like in debate, like, she kicked his ass in the debate. I mean, Trump was terrible in debate. She wasn't great, but again, I think that was because she was holding back on policy stuff. But yeah, imagine, for example, you know, it's 3 weeks before the election, and you've got the AOC Twitch stream where she's playing whatever fucking game the kids are playing. Baldur's Gate 3. That's the only game I know to play now. She's playing Baldur's Gate 3 with Taylor Swift. That's something. I mean, is that enough to win the election by itself? No, I don't think so, but I think that's something. Again, just getting your face out there, because like how many people are going to watch AOC and Taylor Swift play Baldur's Gate 3 2 weeks before the election? Like, I feel like that's going to be an event.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot.
Certainly more than watch fucking dusty old Trump talk about how whatever the fuck is whatever the fuck.
Well, and like there's so many issues with in-person stuff. You know, there's like a lot of they don't talk about it a whole lot, but I guess Trump couldn't go to a lot of venues because they had unpaid bills at a lot of venues. So they had to keep going to these shittier and shittier venues in places because they didn't have. It's like, and people were out in the cold sometimes. They were stranded without buses sometimes. All of that shit goes away if you just have these kind of streams. And you could do, I mean, you were saying do an issue like 2 hours every 2 weeks. I would say maybe do 2 hours, 2 days a week, and then maybe 2 hours doing a game, you know, just kind of let people do like super chats or something. Let people ask questions through the chat. And again, have a production team just sitting there. I mean, how much money does a campaign take in versus how much does it cost to make a really nice YouTube setup with YouTube team? I mean, it's not cheap, but compared to what a campaign takes in, it'd be almost nothing. It'd be a drop in the bucket.
Hold on, I want to look that up because I don't know if the numbers are out entirely. It looks like, let's see here. It looks like with both campaigns together, somewhere around $2 billion, about $1 billion each, I think, something like that.
Imagine $1 billion for a YouTube setup. I
Well,
mean,
the other thing that actually, and this is why brainstorming sessions are so good, I think. How long does it take to fly from DC to Iowa to Madison, Wisconsin, to Milwaukee, Michigan, to, you know, or to Detroit, Michigan, to let's say Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania? You know, all these places you want to go to. It takes forever. I mean, that's going to be 2 weeks. But again, if you go for a more online friendly campaign, all of a sudden it's like I can have a Zoom meeting with the Chamber of Commerce in Philadelphia. I can then have a meeting with the Women's Auxiliary in Des Moines, and I can have a meeting with, you know, this group of I don't know who the fuck UAV pilots in Wisconsin, because it's all tele, you know, it's all you just do it digitally. And all of a sudden now you increase your FaceTime with voters. Now again, it's a bit of a gamble because you're doing a virtual FaceTime, but still, I mean, I'd like to meet AOC. I've never met her personally, but like if you could say, well, you can meet AOC, but it has to be digitally, and it's like, yeah, I'd be cool with that. I mean, it's cooler to meet people in person, but it's cool to meet people that are cool.
Been in the same room with her, but yeah, I think it'd work. I mean, I think you might want to build up a good online following and a good reservoir of hashed out, thought out, vetted political ideas. Maybe start early. You know, maybe do it like start a vlogcasts type of thing like 2 years before or something. So you have something like 100 episodes, all with each. You could even then do like 2 hours on a specific topic or something and how it will affect people. And just really lay it out, but also have fun. Make, you know, content that people want to see. And
actually,
then
there's a secondary benefit of that. Imagine, for example, let's say paid family leave, just as a thing. Imagine Kamala Harris had a 45-minute video of her explaining exactly what paid family and medical leave is going to look like and why we need it. And imagine that was out there. So, like, there's this thing. You know what white papers are?
I know.
So white papers are the things the candidates release all the time. Kamala Harris has probably hundreds of them. I don't know the exact number, but they're basically these policy papers. But the problem is nobody fucking reads them.
Right.
And so what if instead of a white paper, or you put out a white paper and then you just did a video? You just did it doesn't have to be 45 minutes. Imagine you had a 15-minute video. Just going through basically, this is what I'm saying. So I put out a white paper, and now I'm going to put out a video and tell you that's what this white paper means.
Yeah.
And maybe try to, again, hire a production company, make it fun.
I mean, you could spend so much to make it look so good on YouTube and still spend only a fraction of what this last election cost.
But remember what they're
Plus-
trying to do, and again, this is when it talks about cost. This is an important thing to talk about, because what are the consultants saying? The consultants are saying buy ads on network television. Well, that's one of the most expensive things you're looking at. Like those are
Yeah,
incredibly
ridiculous.
expensive. And again, I'm not saying don't ever do that or don't just throw that out, out entirely, but like maybe reallocate your funding a little bit to places where, again, right now, ads online right now are dirt cheap. Ad revenue is just, it's falling out the floor on online right now. And so imagine you put some of that, a little bit more of that money into online, and also do it more as just like informative videos where you're just saying, this is my thing. This is what we're going to do.
Open a Patreon account. How much could Bernie Sanders have gotten through a Patreon account?
If Bernie Sanders opened a Patreon account tomorrow, he would have like $1 million a month, probably.
Well, and then not for nothing, but a tertiary positive benefit. The amount of less travel and airline travel and all that, it directly helps climate a little bit. I mean, not as much as like regulating businesses, but you're not flying another plane to yet another location for the third time today. I mean,
Yeah, so this is basically exactly why I wanted to do this, because I feel like, and this is, by the way, a good thing for other people. Like, even if you don't do YouTube or anything like that, like talk to people, just throw things around. It's one of the reasons, by the way, that I sort of hate the debate things, because I feel like I would rather have a conversation than a debate. Unfortunately,
yeah,
people, there's a bunch of disingenuous people out there, and maybe you can't do that. But I mean, there are so many people that will refuse to see something because it is not in their point of view to see it.
yeah.
It's what's the old phrase? What a man stands for depends on where he sits. The old sort of political maxim. And it's impossible to convince somebody of something if their paycheck depends on them not being convinced of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I feel like I think we've talked probably more than we should have talked about this anyway. But I think it's a really good conversation. It's an interesting conversation. Let me go to you. Do you have any kind of final thoughts on this? Again, this is not really solutions. I mean, this is sort of it's not a plan. It's the concept of a plan.
I'll take it back to the beginning real quick. I think I don't know what's going to happen, obviously. I don't know that. I doubt it's going to be just, sunshine and rainbows and we get, lower taxes for billionaires. My guess is that the people that spent the time pushing Donald Trump do have an agenda, and they do want to change a lot of America. And probably for the bad, considering somebody like myself who's both an atheist and an anarchist and an abolitionist in a lot of ways. I think, but also as a white male, I'm probably not going to feel a whole lot of it. I think it's probably more likely that gay people and trans people are going to feel this Trump presidency the most. And right now, the best you can do, I think, is to show yourself to be a safe person to be around. They're going to need a lot of support. They're going to need a lot of help. And I think the best you can do is to keep living your values and be kind, join up with organizations, join up with like charities or like what's the house building one that Jimmy Carter was a part of for a long time? Do things that
Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah. Do things that get you out there talking to people and helping. And I think right now, letting people see that there are people out there who do care and don't want people to get hurt because of who they are, I think that's the best you can do right now.
So I'm embarrassed I didn't think to ask the question of like, what are our suggestions? And I'm glad you did. So I think what I would say, I pretty much agree with everything you said. Don't watch too much news. Just don't. Like, I think that it is very like, and I'm not saying shut yourself off from the news either. Like, you have to find your sweet spot. Make sure you know what's going on, but don't power on this stuff where you're doom scrolling Twitter or Threads or anything else. Just make sure to keep yourself informed, but don't drive yourself nuts. I think
do yourself a favor and go for like Reuters or AP.
Yeah,
they're far less political.
Keep it
more
simple.
real news.
Democracy Now! Democracy Now! Is very good. I know Amy Goodman's not as flashy as some of the other programs, but she's really smart, and she is very and they're more progressive network, but it is very, very fact based and not a lot of opinion. What else? Protect yourself. Like, keep yourself out of. It's one of those things. Like, I feel like, the advice is always, how do you help advance the things that I want to advance? And that's what most parties try to do. But like, protect yourself. If you're in a situation where it's not safe to be openly progressive, don't be openly progressive. Like, your safety is more important than any of that shit. So just protect yourself and be safe. And I think, and this is one thing that I am going to try to be better at. It's one thing my wife always tried to talk me into doing, and I should be better at it. Try to work local, because like you can make a difference. There's things you can do locally that really do make a difference, and try to do that. Again, obviously vote in the national elections, and it's really important to do that. But if there is a person who is local who seems like a good person, talk to them, and help their campaign out. For city council or school board or whatever, because those are important things. By the way, speaking of Hassan Piker, he actually does. I talked to him. I talked to him online once, and I refer to him as Broly McNepotism, which I stand by. And I appreciate that. But anyway, I think there's hope. This could be really rough. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I do think, and by the way, I guess one last thing to sort of touch on is, what are our hopes kind of going forward? Like, what do we hope could come out of this? And I think that we have seen, if we look back in the 2000s, we had Al Gore, who, well, he won the election, but didn't get to win the election. Was not a particularly popular candidate, not a particularly charismatic candidate, and lost, or won, depending on your perspective. He did win. You have John Kerry, a person who's not particularly popular, who lost. You have Barack Obama, somebody who was actually quite popular and won twice. Then we have Hillary Clinton, who was an unpopular candidate and lost. We had Joe Biden, who was a barely popular candidate and barely lost. And we had Kamala Harris, who was a unpopular candidate. Unpopular by a shallow margin, about 1 point. But was
Biden won.
Right. Huh?
Biden won though.
Right. I'm saying he was barely popular and barely won.
Yeah.
If I said the opposite, I apologize. So what I think is, and what I hope is, maybe this breaks the mold. Maybe we actually look at candidates, and the Democratic Party looks at candidates in a way that is not so goddamned insular. I'm hearing people talking about Pete Buttigieg right now. I'm sorry, I'm not on that train. I don't think Pete Buttigieg is going to be a popular candidate. I think he seems like a very insidery kind of guy. I realize he's from West Bend, Indiana, the home of 47 people. But he worked for Goldman Sachs, or I don't know if it was Goldman Sachs. He worked for a hedge fund. Like, this is not the savior of the party. It just isn't. So when you look at candidates, look at them and be like, okay, not what do I think about them? What do the larger American population think about this candidate? Because again, Bernie Sanders was popular in 2016 and he was popular in 2020. So I don't know. What would your hope be to come out of this?
I'm wrong. I hope that it's like everybody says, and that it's just going to be 4 years of prosperity, and that the Christian nationalists don't take over, and they're not just getting rights away from people and, controlling everything for the next 40 years or something. I hope it's not Handmaid's Tale. I hope there isn't a curtailing of rights. I hope there isn't any mass... God, I hate to use that. I hope there's no mass deaths or anything. I hope I'm entirely wrong about that.
Yeah, me too. And one very final last thing I was going to mention. I did mention Character Limit. A couple of the books that I've read recently, I reread. Well, I don't know where to find that. Everything You Love Will Burn. I can't find the author's name right offhand, but Everything You Love Will Burn's fantastic book follows Matthew Heimbach, an avowed white supremacist, in the run-up to an immediate election of Donald Trump in 2016. I just read Black Pill by Ellie Reeve. It is a book about and there's going to be sort of a theme with these. It is a book about sort of online radicalization. So she talks to some of the people from 8chan and a bunch of the white supremacist groups.
Leftover gamer gay people.
Yeah, it's that whole group of people. So I'd recommend that a lot. Bradley Onishi's Preparing for War, I just finished. It is sort of about the history of Christian white nationalism, which is really, really eye-opening. And I just started, I do all these things on Audible. I should probably say that. Antisocial, Online Extremist, Techno-Utopians, and the Hijacking of the American Conversation by Andrew Marantz. And that is sort of, he was a reporter for The New Yorker. So his perspective is kind of interesting. He comes from a kind of a more, he comes from kind of a more centrist establishment kind of perspective. And then I can't recommend it yet, but I also got Breaking Hate, Confronting the New Culture of Extremism by Christian Picky. Damn my inability to pronounce things. Christian Picciolini. Very Italian name.
It's quite a name, yeah.
So I can't recommend that one officially because I haven't read it yet, but I think it looks good and it's gotten good reviews. That's one of the things, I guess, as a thing to sort of request or a thing to do is read and educate yourself. Don't do it to the exclusion of other things in your life, but learn. And don't just pick things just from one particular perspective. Make sure that the things are supported factually in that. I don't know. Have you read anything recently that you want to recommend, Brandon?
Well, not really politically. Here recently, I'm a sci-fi and fantasy guy, so that's kind of where my attention gets drawn. I will say there is a couple that I could recommend, though. There's one by a guy named David Graeber called Debt the First 5,000 Years. He was an anarchist anthropologist. He's dead now, but really, really interesting take on early history as far as how humans came about. And there wasn't really this, there's this popular idea that we started off as like kind of a barter system and then went into capitalism, and that's not entirely the case. It's a little bit depending on how you define barter, but there is many more ways that like ancestral hunter-gatherer tribes ran things than just a one-for-one trade. It's really, really interesting. There's also a book called Seeing Like a State by James Scott, and that one's pretty good too.
All right. I think that is enough commiserating and hoping and dreading and raging and all the other things that we're doing. Again, Kale, I want to apologize for him. He, like I said, his internet dropped out, but he wanted to stick around. And yeah, I think final thoughts, Brandon?
No, I'm glad we did this. I'm glad we got to lay it all out there. That's about it. Yeah. I feel like I've said everything I thought I wanted to say.
Be safe. Just be safe. And on that bombshell, I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a good drink. And have a good day.